On almost ready to go. I'm so excited to be here with you guys tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that you all survived that crazy storm. I will say that out of that storm came several very heartwarming stories. There was a story of a lady and her boyfriend who heard something out in the snow on the evening of the snowstorm, and they went outside, and there was a developmentally disabled man stuck in a snowdrift with horrible burns and blisters from the snow. So they brought him inside and they took good care of him until they could get him to the hospital. And I guess the whole neighborhood came together and cleared the snow so they could get him over to where he needed to go. And he ended up in the burn unit, which actually kind of surprised me. But I guess the net effect would be about the same between frostbite and like second or third degree burns. Terrible, terrible, chilling story. But thank goodness there were good people nearby to make sure that he was taken care of. And that was in New York too. I have such a down opinion about New Yorkers. I was really happy to hear that they'd done something super positive. They seem to get their kicks from being kind of rude, so I was very happy to hear that they were being so kind. So maybe there's truth to the idea that they're not nice, but they're kind. Not necessarily the same thing, whereas in the South they'll be very nice. They'll be very nice, but they won't be kind. Whereas in New York, they won't be nice, but they will be kind. I think I'm just confusing myself. You know what I mean? There's such a difference between Southern people and people up in New York. A couple things I wanted to talk about today. Elon Musk, surprisingly, has been going crazy on Twitter. Just joking. That's not at all surprising. This has really been his plaything since he's bought it. And I'm actually kind of amused by everything that he says and all the memes that he's tweeting out. So we're going to look at some of that stuff. We're going to look at what Gen Z thinks we should do for mental health days at work. We're going to look at some of the disincentivization to work. Apparently you can earn more money just staying at home than you can working. And finally, we're going to end with Florida trying to rebuild public confidence in vaccinations, which I am very happy they're trying to do. So let's get started talking about Elon. He always has a spicy opinion, and this is no different. Musk slams corporate journalism in blistering series of tweets. Magnet, he specifically requested that this be spelled M-A-G-N-E-T for him. He's a business magnate, he calls himself. Magnate criticizes media response to Twitter files. Twitter CEO and increasingly contentious cultural critic Elon Musk this week slammed mainstream media for what he indicated was a lackluster response to the bombshell Twitter files his company has released over the last several weeks. Those files have revealed a wide-ranging and at times conspiratorial effort by Twitter moderators to censor and restrict huge portions of speech on the platform, particularly those surrounding COVID-19 and President Joe Biden's family. This is all true, conspiratorial in the sense that they were actually making an attempt to conspire against the people. Gotta move my computer. Sorry about that. On Tuesday, responding to a writer's Substack post regarding the extent to which the corporate media has become the propaganda wing of the state, Musk wrote on Twitter, "Why is corporate journalism rushing to defend the state instead of the people?" That's a really good question. "Why would anyone trust corpo journalism?" he wrote later. Again, valid question, and most people don't. Elsewhere, following a CNBC commentator's claim that Musk's reputation with Twitter is impacting his reputation when it comes to all of his companies, Musk himself responded, "The legacy media should worry about its reputation. We have only just begun." And I have said it before, and I'll say it again, that I'm genuinely concerned for Elon Musk's health and well-being at this point. I really hope that he doesn't decide to take the Canadian way out, a la Epstein. Hopefully that doesn't happen to him. He's so high profile, though, that I have a little confidence, and he has some of the best security in the business, so that's good too. But wow, he's wading into spicy waters. I'm happy for him. Somebody really needs to do it, but it's terrifying nonetheless. The business tycoon at one point indicated his willingness to consider Twitter's purchase of Substack, a popular online writing platform, in order to bring about massive competition for obsolete legacy corporate media. Wow, cool. That's actually a really neat idea. I'm open to the idea, he said. This isn't all he's been tweeting. He's been sharing some really spicy memes, which, again, I'm totally on board with, but it's wild. Oh, he was talking about gain of function. You guys, this is crazy stuff. This is in response to, Mark Andreessen. Almost no one seems to realize that the head of bioethics at the National Institute of Health, the person who's supposed to make sure that Fauci behaves ethically, is his wife. And that is correct. That's something that I've known for quite a while now, but that little fact always seems to escape me since ethics has little or nothing to do with Anthony Fauci, period. And Elon Musk goes on to say, gain of function in this context is just another way of saying bioweapon. Some good nuggets in article. Important to note that Fauci authored 2012 paper arguing for gain of function research. Obama wisely put this on pause, but Fauci restarted it. Yeah, there's been a lot of pushback against gain of function. There's a reason they do it in the US, in China, and not in the US. Despite these glaring issues, Twitter nonetheless had an internal Slack channel unironically called Fauci Fan Club. And he has the exploding head emoji because seriously, that doesn't make sense to me either. I invite community notes to correct or amend this thread. I don't know what community notes is. Oh yeah, okay. So community notes is where Twitter users go in and they double check everything and make sure they like give context and all that other stuff. It's really good stuff. This all stems from Mark Andreessen's observation about Chat GPT, which is the AI system that answers questions. The question that he asked it was, has Anthony Fauci ever lied? ChatGPT, the AI thing, says it is not accurate or fair to say that Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and a leading expert on infectious diseases, has ever lied. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Whoever is writing the algorithms behind this AI is incredibly biased. This is not something that an AI would gather just on its own. He goes on to say Dr. Fauci is a highly respected scientist and physician who has spent his career working to improve public health and combat infectious diseases. This honestly sounds like an acolyte of Fauci's. It's kind of gross. And the more you see of ChatGPT, the more you can see exactly how these algorithms can be biased. That's a little beside the point. But if you ask ChatGPT, why is a pro-life position good, they'll say, actually, it's not. Being pro-abortion is better. And I'm just like, wow, you don't strike me as at all unbiased. That's craziness. Anyway, Elon pinned that specific tweet about gain of function. He shared this meme. It's dangerous to believe anything blindly. The science is settled. That's not how science works. And he says, you're racist. Which is such an excellent meme. I love it very much. And here we have the actual scientific method, which is ask questions, do background research, construct a hypothesis. Experimental data becomes background research for news and future project. Ask new questions, form new hypothesis, experiment again. Test with an experiment. Procedure is working. Yes, no. If it's not, troubleshoot and redo it. Analyze data and draw conclusions. Results align with hypothesis. Results align partially or not at all with hypothesis. Communicate results. And here we have this very aged looking scientist who's clearly worked very hard on all this stuff. And then on the other hand, you have the science worshippers method, which is formulate or plagiarize a hypothesis, construct a model based on preconceived ideas, find data that agrees with the model, discard data that does not align with the model, and shout, trust the experts. And we saw a lot of this, not just during the pandemic, but specifically at Twitter. Honestly, when you're trying to share even the CDC's own data and they're shutting you down for that, there is a serious question of almost a conflict of interest between who is telling this tech company what to do, because the tech company is not in the business of public health. They're not epidemiologists. They don't study germs and they don't study that science, but they somehow consider themselves in a position to decide who should be able to speak and who should not. Anyway, really fun. I think that we should go through some of the memes that show this stuff. Oh, wow. Video shows a group of suspected illegal immigrants. Wow, so he's weighing in on stuff like illegal immigration. Bill Malugan is a great follow as well at Bill Fox LA when it comes to the illegal migration stuff. Racist for not liking science. Synthetic mRNA has incredible potential. Interesting. This one's good too. They brainwashed you. This is a man with a pride flag. It's got the Muslim sign on it. He has 5 different boosters. CNN, communism, feminism, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. the yin yang sign. I don't know what that's about. And then Google, of course, Planned Parenthood. And then the other guy is just a guy holding an American flag who says, really? Who's brainwashing who? Honestly, spelling bee contestant. Okay. Anyway, I'm getting distracted reading Elon Musk's tweet feed. It's actually really interesting what he's saying and doing. I personally am incredibly glad that he's putting the mainstream media under the microscope. They deserve it. No one has held them accountable for such a long time, and it is about time, because I say this all the time. I find that when people really go crazy, it is often because they don't have anyone in their lives to whom they can be told, by whom they can be told no. No one is around them anymore who can say, no, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. I don't think that's a good call. Who will push back on them. So without that healthy kind of feedback, they're not in a position where they can be like, oh, well, maybe we did make a mistake. It's not enough, obviously, to have accountability. You also have you have to have the humility to accept that accountability. But the mainstream media has had neither of those things, and it really shows with the amount that they're willing to lie. And it's not just actively lying. It's passively lying by refusing to cover certain things. In this case, the Twitter files that have been dumped by these multiple different journalists at this point. And I'm really glad that he's putting them on blast, because they certainly do deserve it. I don't know why I'm not able to see chat. No new super chats. Okay, I can only see your chats apparently if you're super chatting me, so you have to super chat me. Otherwise, I won't be able to see your commentary at all. I do like to read what you guys are saying. I wish I could see what's going on here. Maybe Andy can come in here and fix it, but that's okay. Well, I was going to take a break to read what you guys were saying, because I know that we always have at least a few people in there in the chat. I'm going to assume that some of you said hi. In that case, I'll also say hello back in return. I personally love what Elon Musk is doing over at Twitter, but I again caution against viewing him as some kind of messiah, because he's not. He is unfortunately a single point of failure that could easily be taken away from us. This is part of the reason that I part of the reason I'm so concerned about him being in such a prominent position to be challenging the mainstream media. Oh, there we go. There's the chat. Andy says, what's wrong with it? Yeah, I'm sorry. I just couldn't see it. I don't know why. It's weird. For some reason, when I start the stream and then I'm not like immediately looking at the chat, I can't see it at all. Red Bag Master says, howdy. Yep. Hi, Lydia. Best wishes from Central Texas. Lydia, do you like gardening? Yes, of course. We're going to definitely garden in the summer. Something that my mother-in-law is very into. I think gardening is great, but I have no way to learn it right now. Yep, it's worth it. Although I don't think that Red Bike Master would have a good way to do it right now. Got to do it guerrilla style. Yeah, I don't know how that would work. If you're traveling on the road, I don't think it's a good idea to have, it's going to be really difficult to grow a garden. Somebody says with AI, garbage in, garbage out. I think that's true. If you do feed a bunch of nonsense into AI, you're going to come up with a bunch of nonsense, and that shouldn't surprise you at all. Fix it, you're welcome. Thank you, Andy. I just need to live stream a remote desktop session for me to do stuff on there. Yeah, it's a good idea. Andy could also sit at his little desk across the way from me, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Okay, so we covered Elon Musk. We took a browse through Elon Musk's timeline, which is always a good time. Now I think let's look through a different kind of Twitter timeline. We're going to talk about 82% of employed Gen Zers wanting mental health days, says this new study. And from my understanding, this study isn't exactly new. It's actually from a few months back. But let's see what people have to say about this. It's kind of an interesting idea, right? Without knowing anything about it, I'm going to have to say right offhand that mental health days are going to cut into the productivity of a company and should probably be really considered carefully. But let's read what people are thinking. We all wanted mental health days, but only Gen Z has the grit to demand them. Good for them. Somebody else says, LOL. Mental equals 4 days a year, no voting rights in an election. Until proven sane, voting rights can be suspended. That's an interesting idea. Somebody says, get them to dig a ditch and change a tire. And somebody else says, that's weak. I don't know that that's weak. It's kind of an interesting concept. I personally have never been in a position where I could take a mental health day. Would have been nice. I've always worked like 12-hour shifts. I've worked 6 days a week. I've done all kinds of stuff. Come on, Forbes, go away. Nobody wants to pay for your garbage. 82% of employed Gen Zers want mental health days, study finds. Traditionally, employee benefits have meant 401k plans, health and life insurance, paid time off, etc. Then the cool companies added perks like on-site daycare, break rooms with ping pong tables, and flex time. A recent Talent LMS and Bamboo HR survey found that a whopping 82% of employed Gen Z employees want mental health days, a concept that may not have shown up on an HR manager's radars just a decade ago. Interesting. The October 2018 American Psychological Association report, Stress in America Generation Z, finds that Gen Z is significantly more likely to report their mental health as fair or poor, with 27% saying this is the case. Thankfully, the report also suggests that stigmas around discussing mental health challenges and seeking help have diminished. Overall, the younger generations are significantly more likely to receive or have received treatment or therapy from a psychologist or other mental health professional, with more than 1/3 of both Gen Z and millennials reporting they have received such help. So I'm going to pause right there and say that I don't actually think that everybody getting therapy is a good idea. This is a very contentious issue with a lot of the guys in my life really hate the idea of therapy. I don't know if you guys are watching this right now. You should be, darn it. Otherwise, you're not good friends. But they don't like therapy because it turns out that therapy is just talking through your emotions and through your feelings, and that's really something that women are more inclined to want to do. And honestly, I can't blame a guy who's like, yeah, I'm not interested in therapy. I don't think it's a good idea. It's not going to work for me. One of the things that we should probably promote for these young people, first of all of these people who have mental health issues and inability to focus, hard times, stress and anxiety and all this stuff left over maybe from evolution, this need to be in a constant state of high alert. One of the things that they would probably really benefit from, for the guys, I would really recommend something like a mixed martial art, something like BJJ, some kind of contact sport that requires them to be fully focused on what they're doing at the moment and allows them to get out some of their aggression, some of their frustration, and to physically enact some of these things in a way that therapy could never for guys. Honestly, I feel like this will be a much better approach to handling mental health, at least for men, and women as well could really benefit from just being in the moment and focus with something like yoga, focusing on something I really enjoyed, barre. You can do Pilates. There's a lot of really fun activities that you can do as an adult. It just needs to be in a class and probably at a gym. But I think that would really help people. The other thing that I really wish that Gen Z and millennials would also focus on is other people. Because they find, I was looking at this the other day because I was under the impression that millennial women were very unhappy, and I was correct. The most unhappy demographic is a 42-year-old single childless woman working in a profession like law or medicine, and earning less than, I think, $50,000 a year. The happiest person is a married father, 42 years old. I believe that's the age. No, 37 years old, 39 years old, and the father of one child. Wife works part-time, who earns a certain amount of money, I don't remember what, and who works in, I want to say, cybersecurity. So this is a man who is fully engaged with his career potential. He's found his partner. He has a child, and he's earning the right amount of money. So all of these things come together to make them the most satisfied with their position in life. When you have somebody who has no one to take care of, no responsibilities to anyone other than themselves, and even then not really that much, you're going to have less happiness. And I know that happiness probably isn't the right metric to measure this with. It should probably be more like purpose or meaning or drive or a feeling of satisfaction at the end of the day. When you remove other people from a person's life and when you isolate them like we have with social media, I'm going to call it anti-social media here on out, I swear, because social media has done nothing but isolate us from one another. What we're seeing is people with serious mental health issues because they're never required, probably even in their youth, and certainly now, to think about someone else. One of the best piece of parenting advice that I've ever seen that made me realize that this is what my parents did, probably without even realizing it, was to teach your children to take care of other people and to be in the service of other people. So they should be doing chores. In my family, we made meals. I had, as I got older, I started with lunch, and then as I got older, I started to take care of dinner. So every day I'd have this routine. I would start dinner at 5. We would eat at about 6. I would shop with my mom, make sure we got everything we needed. And it gave me such a deep sense of satisfaction to know that I could cook. I could make something really good. My family always appreciated it. I was giving them healthy food. It tasted really good. And it was such a sense of contribution and satisfaction, and like this sense of helping the rest of your family stay structured and stay in order. It was that was actually empowering for a young kid. And I was only 9 when I started doing that stuff, but they gave me age appropriate tasks. They taught me all of these skills. I felt very, advanced because I was learning how to cook at such a young age. I thought it was really neat. I thought it was really fun to be able to contribute to the general well-being. And I think that is really one of the biggest things that probably kept me mentally strong, including into my adult years, because then I was like, all right, well, I'm feeling stressed. How can I find a way to, usually I would bury myself in work because that would really help me feel like I was making a difference to the world, especially when I worked with older people, felt like I was actually making impact in their lives. I really think that could be a solution to Gen Z who's demanding mental health days, because what they're asking for is time off when what they really need is to be focused on someone who's not themselves. I don't know if you've heard the expression Michael Knowles uses often, a man wrapped up in himself makes a very small package indeed. I don't know who originally said that, but I think of that often because I feel like that's exactly what's happening with millennials and Gen Z. And it's kind of sad. You guys can let me know what you think. Let me know if you think mental health days would be good. I know that a lot of them have struggles with mental health, and mental health stuff is no joke. You can't exactly argue with. You can't rationalize the way you feel. It's a very challenging place to be, and it requires a great deal of introspection and maturity. You need to be aware of yourself. You need to be familiar with yourself. Gen Z certainly doesn't have that. They're just too young for one thing right now. But the other thing is that they might never have to be, because nobody might ever require them to take that step for themselves. Let's see what you guys are thinking. Also, I managed to make it home after my flight debacle from last night. I'm very happy to hear that. I keep hearing stuff about Southwest Airlines. It's horrifying. I'm very glad that Andy and I came and were back before then. Red Bike Master talking about his next load, trucking. Let's see here. We Texans learn from the past. Yes. Victorville. All right. I got a frowny face. I don't know why. I'm sure it was very sad. Okay, there we go. Andy. Yay. Andy is a wizard. Let me see what you guys think about mental health day. Somebody says, LOL, that's what I do, BJJ. I want to get Andy involved because I think, first of all, that's something he'd be great at, because I'm pretty sure he's made out of some kind of titanium with unbreakable bones and capable of being injured by any fall. But that's probably just because he's, been skating for the past 30 years. Resilience is rare. Yeah, I agree. So it's resilience, and they need resilience and a focus on other people who aren't themselves. Really, I think that's the bottom line. It is indeed. A man wrapped up in himself makes a very small bundle. Yeah, that's correct. 100%. And I don't know who said that, but I think that's exactly what we're seeing right now. And it is true. Oh, Taz Riot sent a super chat. Says the government calls their own citizens mentally ill of unsound mind. USC Title I, Chapter 1. Interesting. I'm going to have to look into that. That is fascinating. I wanted to do a deep dive on a gentleman named Scott Wiener from California. His name is fitting because he has passed some incredibly strange bills focused on children, focused on lowering the age of consent, focusing on trying to make it possible for kids to get the COVID vaccine without their parents' knowledge or consent, trying to change, for example, sex offenders, the classification of sex offender among people who offend against children. Truly deeply disturbing stuff. And you can find pictures of this gentleman, Scott Wiener, wearing wearing light bondage gear. And it's incredibly disturbing that he's passing laws that affect children. Genuinely disgusting. But I chose not to do that. We might do that at a later date. Today we're just going to talk about why the government is paying people more than they earn at their jobs, which might be a problem. Let's look at what's going on here. I don't know why they always start these videos without my consent. Disincentive crisis. Many states pay families unemployment benefits larger than job salaries. Families often can earn as much or more income from receiving government assistance as they can working, academics claim. Amid an ongoing labor crisis with businesses across the country continually struggling to fill open worker slots. Have you guys seen this, by the way? We see this everywhere over here. Two economists say part of the problem may stem from roughly a quarter of all U.S. states paying citizens sky-high unemployment benefits that sharply disincentivize working. The report published this month by the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, CUP, interesting, points to a rash of state-level policies that offer generous payouts for workers who are currently unemployed. The writers, University of Chicago economics professor Casey Mulligan and Heritage Foundation economics research fellow E.J. Antoni, argue that in the paper that in 14 states, unemployment benefits and Affordable Care Act subsidies are the equivalent to a head of household earning $80,000 in salary plus health insurance benefits. Holy cow. 3 states, Washington, Massachusetts, and New Jersey, researchers found that unemployment benefits could top $100,000, with Washington offering $122,000 in payouts. This is insane to me. Speaking with Just the News, Mulligan noted that safety net and welfare programs functioned well in years past without disincentivizing real employment. For many years, up to and including 2007, we had an extensive safety net without mass suffering, etc., while encouraging work better than we do today. So a simple recommendation would be to roll back the federal programs to 2007 before the Obama and Biden administrations got a hold of them. That is interesting. In the wake of the coronavirus crisis, the U.S. is missing more than 3 million workers of working age that could be working and were working prior to COVID but are not today. How many times can I say working in one sentence? Holy cow. There are many factors that could help explain the disappearance of workers from the workforce, the authors argue, including continuing fears of COVID. We're never going to hear the end of this. Early retirement, long COVID. Again, we're never going to hear the end of it. The decision by many not to ever return to work and instead retire early, among others. But this study shows that one factor contributing to the dearth of workers is the generous benefits paid to families without workers. If states reduced unemployment insurance maximums and provided more targeted benefits, that would reduce unemployment and the duration for which people remain unemployed. These are really good recommendations. It doesn't surprise me at all that the Obama and Biden administration led to all of this happening in the first place. And it's only going to get worse because Biden is in office. I'm convinced it's going to get worse. One of the things that Thomas Sowell used to talk about was how important it was to pay attention to the fact that the government had stepped in and replaced fathers in the home. They made it so that women were incentivized to bear children out of wedlock because it was actually more advantageous to them. They were able to get more benefits just by saying, oh, the father's not in the picture. He's not in the home. So they removed the responsibility from this young man and they put it on the government to take the father's place, which means that kids were growing up without fathers. Fathers had no responsibility to their families, and it generally led to the decline of the American culture because once you start to lose family structure, you also start to lose religious institutions, you start to lose all the important tenets of community, and the whole family really starts to fall apart, which of course I view as a net negative because you need a strong family to build a strong community. You need strong families for good churches. You need good churches for strong religion. You need strong religion for cultural cohesion and to keep people pointed in the same direction without top-down governmental instruction. So I really think that the government stepping in and taking the responsibility off the fathers, not just as actual fathers, but also as the breadwinners in these households like they are right now, you see an issue when you start to give people this sense of hopelessness because they have no desire to take care of first of all, there's no desire to take care of their family in the first place because they don't have to. And second of all, there's no desire to work at all, because if you cared at all about your family, you'd want to give them money. But if you don't have to work for it, it means that you won't be incentivized to actually perform the duties of a functional member of society. This is bad, obviously, because even though we can print money now, we have fiat currency that means absolutely nothing. We can do whatever we want with it, apparently. It still is a problem of human motivation to say something like, oh, well, I have no reason to work. I have no reason to care about my family. The state can take care of my kids. I don't really care if they go to drag queen story hour or all this stuff. None of it matters. I have enough money. I can eat. I can entertain myself. And just, it makes me feel like we're in kind of like a rat utopia experiment where we can have everything we want and it's going to drive us crazy, because I really don't think this is going to end well for the human experiment at all. But I guess I could be wrong. I just don't see it, because we watched what happened when the government came out and said, you know, we will take care of you, dear single mother, and your children who don't have their fathers. We might have time to take a look at Scott Wiener tonight. Let's see how we're doing on time. All right, let me see what the chat is up to. I see many chats. They're all carrying on their conversations with one another, which is great. My husband is talking about technology over there, which is awesome. OnlyFans link. I do have an OnlyFans. It is Lids of TikTok, LYDS. You guys are welcome to go over there and check it out. I will never charge you for anything given over there, but I also haven't done anything with it for a while, so go ahead and check it out. Kind of sucks that everyone says they're hiring and desperate for workers, but then when you put in applications, they won't call people back, or they have workers who say they aren't actually hiring. That is an interesting phenomenon. One of the things that we noticed, and one of the things that I'm going to shout out in just a second will help with this. One of the things we notice is that they don't really want people who don't check diversity boxes. So if you're sick of that, if you're willing to push back against that, then I recommend redballoon.work. If you are looking for work and you want to work for an employer who doesn't hate you, go to redballoon.work. Just as if you're looking for a product and you want to buy something from a company that doesn't hate you, you should go to publicsq.com, and they will hook you up with companies that don't hate you. We need to build a parallel economy. We need to work for companies that don't hate our guts, that don't hate our values. We need to support companies that do the same. There is no need for us to be under the heel of leftists just because they own a lot of these institutions. It's not good for us to be contributing our funds toward people who really don't like us and would like for us to be done. Hello, Adrian. Daddy government will raise your they-thems. Yeah, that's really discouraging. Thanks a lot. Yes, unfortunately, and they will teach them that they are they-them, because somebody who is confused from an early age will be easily controlled by a government that's seeking more and more power. Employers are getting benefits from the government if they check enough boxes. Minorities, disabilities, illegals, greed. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And that makes sense that the government would be incentivizing the hiring of these people. That doesn't make it good. That just makes it more likely. I wish that I could say that I thought having a Republican president would fix this stuff, but I don't think it will at the end of the day. And honestly, there's only so much you can say to someone as far as like personal responsibility, because when the entire system, the entire institutions are pointed against you, you need to figure out an alternative method. And our alternative here is a parallel economy. Parallel economy is actually the name of the payment processing system Dan Bongino has. You guys can use official Public Square app, the app itself, to help you navigate what businesses don't hate you. publicsq.com. You can use redballoon.work to see if you can find employment. So if anybody in my chat section is looking for employment, I'm going to strongly recommend you go over to redballoon.work and see what you can find, because Andy was even noticing that on LinkedIn, they were having the whole elevate Black voices and hire Black people and hire all these minorities. And you know what we do need to talk about was that they are trying to remove the MCAT from some medical colleges. Let me pull this up for Black people, which is crazy to me. Dropped for minority students. Okay. Let's see. I thought it was breaking news. 2 Ivy League students say med schools need to change admissions tests over racial disparity. Okay, it's not saying yet that they are dropping them, but I'm not looking at Twitter either. So maybe when I get more information on that, I can talk about that for sure. Excuse me. So I did want to talk about vaccines in Florida because Florida is doing some interesting things in that regard for sure. Let me see if I can find this about the MCAT. You guys get to see me do this in real time. It's very interesting. I know it's fascinating. MCAT resources. Cool. Let's go to the latest. I don't see anything. I have heard that it was like a form of what's it called where you prioritize different races. I don't know why I can't remember the title of that one. Let's talk about this real fast so we can come back to that. Florida COVID-19 committee members emphasize restoring public trust in vaccines. This is good, and I'll tell you why. Governor Ron DeSantis, state surgeon general, says Biden administration has been keeping Americans from making informed decisions about getting vaccinated. Well, given what we know from the most recent Twitter drop, this is 100% categorically true. They've done everything in their power to make sure that Americans aren't fully informed about what was happening, about who is being affected by side effects from these vaccines, about all of this stuff. And it's left a really sour taste in many Americans' mouths. And honestly, I don't blame them. If you've been paying attention at all, you were like, wait a second, that doesn't seem like they're telling me the truth. Let's read. In response to Governor Ron DeSantis creating a new public health integrity committee and filing a petition for a statewide grand jury to investigate potential crimes related to the COVID-19 vaccine, 7 doctors on the committee expressed their support for the only governor in America taking such a stand. The members of the new committee include Jay Bhattacharya, MD, PhD, Martin Kulldorff, PhD, Tracy Beth Hogue, MD, PhD, Joseph Freeman, MD, Christine Stable-Ben, PhD, Brett Weinstein, PhD, and Stephen Templeton, PhD. Florida Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo is overseeing the committee tasked with assessing federal public health recommendations and guidance to ensure that Florida's public health policies are tailored for Florida's communities and priorities. Okay, that sounds like political speak. The Biden administration and pharmaceutical corporation continue to push widespread distribution of mRNA vaccines on the public, including children as young as 6 months old, through relentless propaganda while ignoring real-life adverse events. Governor Ron DeSantis said. At a roundtable earlier this month, he met with health experts who discussed data coverage covering serious adverse events from a COVID-19 mRNA drug. I think they mean mRNA, including coagulation disorders, acute cardiac injuries, Bell's palsy, encephalitis, appendicitis, and shingles. Healthcare professionals should always communicate the risks of a medical intervention to their patients in a manner that is clinically appropriate and meets standards of ethical practice, Ladapo said. President Biden and Big Pharma have completely prevented that from happening. It is wrong. With these new actions, we will shed light on the forces that have obscured truthful communication about the COVID-19 vaccines. Ladapo also said the Florida Department of Health and the University of Florida will conduct research to assess sudden deaths of Floridians who were in good health prior to receiving a COVID-19 vaccination and use disease surveillance and vital statistics to assess their deaths. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, professor of health policy at Stanford University Medical School, said it was time to start taking stock of what went wrong and make reforms so that this doesn't happen again, referring in part to a widespread censorship of qualified people from expressing their thinking. Censorship, he said, resulted in absolutely abysmal decision-making at the top of the country and essentially created a social credit system demeaning people who disagree with the CDC, resulting in bad decisions that don't get checked. Yep, 100%. Brett Weinstein, former Evergreen State College professor of evolutionary biology, also addressed the issue of censorship, saying the decision-making surrounding COVID amounts to the largest blunder in human history. Wow, it's a bold statement. Ongoing censorship, he said, is creating a phony sense that there is agreement amongst all the responsible doctors about what to do. And the few doctors who say otherwise are fringe cranks, and this couldn't be further from the truth. The message that was given to us from public health authorities was not just inept, he added. It actually went well beyond that. It was really the inverse of everything we should have done. Because it was forced on us with this strong form of coercion, it was widely accepted because people didn't have a choice. Others raised concerns about the vaccine research process. Dr. Christine Ben, Chair of Health Sciences, Department of Clinical Resources at the University of Southern Denmark, said her group's research had revealed that vaccines can affect the risk of non-targeted infections, and that a new COVID-19 vaccines have not yet been investigated for their potential effects on the risk of other infections. Dr. Joseph Freeman, emergency medical physician at Thibodeau Regional Medical Center, said our study took a magnifying glass to the original Pfizer and Moderna clinical trials that got the vaccines on the market in late 2020. In the original trials, mRNA vaccines increased serious adverse events at a rate considerably higher than initially realized. Our peer-reviewed study, which was published this August in one of the field's leading journals, indicates that the mRNA COVID vaccine should be urgently reevaluated. He also said, unless further studies can clearly demonstrate a favorable harm between profile mRNA vaccine use should not be recommended in healthy adults and children, and an ethical duty exists to inform the public of these results to allow informed consent from those who chose to take COVID vaccines. There's a little bit more here, but you guys kind of get the idea. You guys can go check out the link in the description below, because I think it's incredibly important that there be public faith in vaccines. I think that it's incredibly important to keep, for example, the numbers of measles down. It's very important for pregnant women to have access to flu vaccines. We know that these things are, at least in the case of flu, partly successful at preventing these infections, and we know that we want to prevent tetanus. There are illnesses for which we receive vaccinations that have no cure. Tetanus is one of those diseases, and you want to prevent it, especially because it's more likely, I think it's more likely to happen in children because they're more likely to be exposed to, for example, rusty things when they're outside playing. That makes sense to me anyway. Not sure, you guys are welcome to fact check me on that one, but I believe that the highest incidence of tetanus would be in younger children. But we definitely do need public confidence in vaccines. And I can't help but think how much public confidence in health officials has been lost because of what happened with COVID. And I do think it has been a gigantic boondoggle and probably one of the biggest mistakes we've made so far. I don't know how long it's going to take us to recover from it, but I also know one of the things that I was listening to Scott Adams earlier today, and he was talking about how people trust scientists, but they don't trust journalists or politicians. And he was saying, well, if you trust science and you're not trusting the people who fund them and tell you about them, then you probably should reevaluate why exactly you're trusting science, because you know that a lot of information that you receive about science is from journalists, and it's from governmental institutions who say, well, you don't have to trust us. You can just trust the science. I mean, we paid for that study. We paid to try to get them to show that this one thing worked over this other thing, but never mind us. You just need to trust them. And I do think he has a very valid point. Honestly, at this point, it kind of does feel like science is bought and paid for. I know that in order to get a lot of grants, they have to demonstrate that they're doing something. Whether it's actually something important doesn't matter. They're willing to say, we are doing a study on how pigeons do on crack cocaine. Doesn't really matter whether it's good or bad, whether it's necessary. We just need those sweet, sweet taxpayer dollars. And we are pretty much willing to do whatever needs to be done. But I digress. I think that I do think it's going to take us a really long time to recover from all of this COVID stuff. Let me see what you guys are saying. I'll show you my view with the chats. Don't throw your pearls to swine. Not sure what that's in relation to. Sign your business up for Public Square using the Sour Patch Lids affiliate link in the description. Yes, that's definitely something you can do. If you guys own your own businesses, go over to Public Square and sign it up. Let them know that I sent you by using the Sour Patch Lids affiliate link. That is in the description. Red balloon. Thank you, Lydia. Yes. Red Balloon seems super cool. They also work with Public Square. If you go to the bottom of the Public Square webpage and you say find a job, they will redirect you to Red Balloon. So it's really neat. And I honestly, seeing a lot of that stuff is giving me a lot of confidence for the future, because I think that what we really need to do, we desperately need to focus in on how to present an alternative. We've done enough complaining. We've dragged our feet enough. We've whined enough. We need to actually present a solution. And I think this is exactly what we need. I do know what else I'm going to talk about. And I'm glad that I saved it for the end, because it's genuinely kind of disturbing. So let's take a look here at this tweet from Ashley St. Clair. And I apologize in advance for this. Ashley St. Clair says, mentally ill men claiming to be women are inserting frozen tomato paste into themselves to, quote, mimic a period. So I will just let that sink in. Oh, I'm almost scared to click these images, but we're going to read how exactly they think this is going to make them into a woman. Ugh, it won't let me zoom in at all. Really? Come on, man. Let me see if I can zoom in. No. Why would I be able to read this? Come on, man. Wow. Okay. So apparently these are the objects that they're freezing into. Oh my gosh. These weird ice cube looking things. Oh, it's not going to let me open the actual image itself. How irritating. Name something that isn't a crime but should be. Sticking ketchup popsicles up yourself to feel like you're menstruating. So a lot of hay is made over the whole pronoun conversation. I've always held that I choose to refer to someone who wants me to use pronouns inconsistent with their gender at birth, that I will refer to them by their first name, or I'll use they, them pronouns. I don't intend to bend the knee when it comes to pronouns, because when you do, it will lead you to places like this. This is actually psychotic. Like, if anyone were to finger paint on a wall with blood, we would not consider that they were just expressing their gender identity. We would never consider that this was normal. And it is uncompassionate and unkind to enable this kind of behavior. And I think that pronouns are the first step down that path. I don't intend to ever kowtow to people who actually believe this kind of thing. And I'm not transphobic. I'm not afraid of this kind of person. I think it is inconsistent with the truth. And I think that it is unkind to put people in a position where they are told that they can do this and that this makes them sane and that this should be normalized. There is a reason that this is not normalized. That is because it is not normal. It is not normal because it is not natural and, once again, not consistent with the truth. If you want to treat someone with the greatest possible compassion, you will tell them the truth, even if they don't really want to hear it. And you will tell them something along the lines of, I love you and I care about you, but I also know that the truth is what is going to anchor you to reality, so you need to hear it. Sorry. Even if it hurts their feelings. I don't think that it's asking too much to refer to someone by the pronouns they were given at birth, because they're not assigned a gender at birth. It is observed. It is a scientific fact that cannot be altered. You can pretend you are something that you are not. You can dress up in accordance with a different gender, but I'm starting to feel like all of this drag stuff is a kind of blackface, but with women. And it's kind of hard to explain, but when you're mocking the concept of being this different thing, that's exactly what was happening with blackface back a few hundred years ago. They would exaggerate the facial features and all of the mannerisms of a certain race. Now they're doing it with a gender, and they're trying to tell us that this is somehow different, that this isn't offensive. And I have to say that that is incorrect. It is entirely as offensive as blackface is and should be to African American people. I hope that in just a few years, all of this stuff will come home to roost, all the child gender transition, because this is different from child gender transition, and I want that to be known clearly. I also want it to be clearly known that trans activists Do not speak for all trans people. The people making the loudest noise and the people throwing around terms like transphobia are not typically the people who are actually in need of actual help for example, gender dysphoria. The people who just want to exist as themselves in a body other than what was observed at their birth, like for example, Blair White, no issue whatsoever with them. They don't want to transition children before they're able to consent. They don't want to force their pronouns on other people. They understand who and what they are. They still have that firm connection to truth, even though they feel like they themselves identify more with a different gender. Trans activists are different. The kind of person who will shut you down for using the wrong pronoun, the kind of person who will go after you and call you a transphobic bigot. These are not the same people, and I think the distinction needs to be made clear. Trans activists are trying to normalize this kind of idea of like a ketchup popsicle. Absolutely, clearly insane. And it's such a play of postmodernism to be like, okay, here's a thing. It's clearly crazy, but you're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to call things what they are. This is actually one of the first rules of Stoicism, is to look things in the face and to know them for what they are. Postmodernism does the inverse. You must look at things and you must refuse to identify them as what they actually are, because that is how they control you. They think they control your perception. They're going to make you accept, and tolerate until you can no longer see the truth at all. This is exactly what they're trying to do here. And it doesn't surprise me that there are a cluster of mentally disturbed people, probably, for example, on Reddit. I can't tell exactly what forum this conversation took place on because I can't zoom in further, but I would expect that you could get at least a few emotionally unhinged people at one place in one time. But the fact of the matter is that postmodernism has made it so that these people feel like they should be made to feel comfortable with what is basically a societally accepted form of insanity. I have such a hard time listening to trans activists in good faith and believing that they want what's best for these people, because I cannot fit it into my mind that they're willing to lie to people and pretend like they're trying to do what's right for them, because to me that is a contradiction in terms. Anyway, I just wanted to bring this delightful development to you guys' attention because I was grossed out and thought I should share it with you guys. I really wish we could zoom in and see what people are saying. But from my understanding, they're inserting this into orifices, and then as it melts, this is just so depressing. I don't even want to say it. I'm so grossed out right now. But I can't imagine that someone who has a firm grasp of reality and is properly rooted in the truth, I can't imagine why someone would want to be something that they are not. If you haven't been lied to, I can't imagine that you'd want to be something you're not, because everyone who's in touch with reality and with the truth recognizes that, for example, being a man is not going to make being a human easier. Have you guys ever met someone of the opposite gender who had zero problems at all? Because neither have I. In fact, being a woman seems to come with a whole different kind of disadvantage to being a man. I know there are women who would attempt to transition to being a man because they thought it would be easier. Well, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there was a lesbian who did this for a while. She successfully lived as a man for, I think it was years. And then when she transitioned back, she was so shaken by the experience. Nobody cared what she thought. Nobody cared how she felt. Nobody cared what she did for a living or if she was ever in any kind of emotional distress. She was so shaken by the experience. I believe, unfortunately, she went on to commit suicide, but I want to look more at that story. I just thought it was so interesting and so distressing that she was just like, I can't handle it. You know, it's awful. And I think that people would do well to pursue the expression of truth to these people, because I don't think that just going along to get along, just using the pronouns, just baking the cake is going to make the problem go away, because the problem is so deeply fundamental. It's so philosophical in nature. If we don't have a connection to the truth, what do we have? We have men who shove ketchup popsicles into themselves so that they can pretend that they are women to some degree. And it's unsettling to look at, but this is exactly what happens when you lose your connection to truth. And this is something that religion can kind of bring us back to. It can at least give us roots and keep us focused on the right things as we search for truth. If we're focused on our families, focused on helping other people, then we're going to have better luck in life overall. And seeking connection to the truth is what's going to make your life better overall. Change my mind. All right, let me see what you guys are saying. I know that was horrifying. I'm sorry to end on such a weird note. I just thought it was super interesting, and I wanted to mention it in passing because I was just kind of disturbed. But I know that there are people out there who mean very well, who just say things like, you know what, it's not that big a deal, just use the pronouns. I'm like, I can't. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I don't think that telling someone a lie is in their best interest pretty much ever. And that's not really a white lie. Using a different pronouns than what someone was born as is not a white lie. I think it's actually kind of harmful to them because you're making it seem like something is possible that is not, unfortunately. Instead of talking to people about why they feel the way they feel, we tell them that they're in the right to feel that way. And that's not fair to do to them. That's not the right thing to say. This is a little bit like the kids who look at the world and are like, wow, that's crazy. I've really been told that I'm enough all along. That is insanely depressing. And then they're upset. They're like the Gen Z who are like, wow, I'm incredibly freaked out about all this stuff because I've been told that I'm okay just the way I am. And I look around and I'm like, what on earth are you talking about? It's so clear to me that I'm not okay the way I am. And now I don't have any way to fix it. It's exactly the same issue with trying to lie to somebody about their pronouns, about their gender identity. And yes, Andy has a point about how people from older LGBTQ generations had different experiences and require that kind of commiseration. But at the same time, I don't know. How many of those books behind you have you read? Legit question. Why can't I go over? There we go. Please, no ban. No, I wouldn't ban you for asking if I'd read the books behind me. I haven't read any of these books behind me because they're not my books. They're Andy's books, and I'm sure that he's read 99.99% of them. This is all stuff that he really cares about. There's The Singularity is Near, which sounds very dire. We have Franz Kafka. We have a little bit of the classics because Andy is very highly educated, likes reading, likes writing, likes drawing, very sharp thinker, very well read, very philosophical, and that's exactly why I like him and why you guys should like him as well. Somebody says practice does not make perfect. Let me see what you guys are talking about. Be yourself. Women, stop trying to be men. Men, stop trying to be women. Get back in the kitchen, learn to cook, get back in the fields, learn to plow. Yeah, I think we would all be a lot happier from that. Reagan made a big mistake closing the insane asylums. Yeah, but I think we also made a mistake by being willing to lie to people. I don't think that's right. If it's frozen, couldn't that do damage? No, it's not going to do any damage to stick something into yourself just because it's frozen. It just would be cold because it's only this big. It looks like they're freezing them in those bottle pop type things, those ice cube holders. Somebody says I'm late. Oh, I'm sorry. You came in the worst part. Libs of TikTok has it right. Mostly TikTok. China is pushing the narrative to create a civil war against stupidity. This isn't a problem in China. Yes. It's pretty common knowledge that somebody was saying that China offers Chinese children the TikTok equivalent of spinach, and it offers American children the fentanyl version of TikTok. It's not good. The fentanyl version of social media. Keenan says the Great War tore away so many of the good men from their wives, left a lot of bad men to create marital problems. It's a game of their own, but without the good guy. A league of their own. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not sure which war you're referring to. Our most recent war was a long time ago. Adrian says this sounds healthy. I am so black-pilled. Yeah, it's not good. I really don't like it. I almost didn't want to share it, but I really want to emphasize the importance of telling people the truth. And believe me when I say there are ways to be compassionate when you speak the truth. You don't have to be a jerk about it. And I know people who are like, oh, well, I'm going to be a jerk because this is just the truth, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people, some really abusive people will tell you, well, I'm just telling you the truth, when really what they're trying to do is cut you down, but they're using the veil of truth to be a jerk about it. And it's like, yeah, I don't think that's probably a good way to present the truth either. What you can do is make it very clear to someone with your words and actions how much you care about them, and then tell them that you are unwilling to lie to them, that you always want to tell them the truth no matter what, even if they don't like it. Honestly, I view that as incredibly valuable when it comes to relationships. I think it's the only way to operate. I would always rather express my view of the truth than try to create some carefully crafted lie. And besides, I'm far too forgetful to hold up any kind of lie with any kind of credibility. But I don't think that's necessarily true from what I've seen. Blue Reader, it's mostly only associated with religious ceremonies. Interesting. I'd have to go back all the way there to see what you guys are talking about. Yep, those are my books, probably more like 80% of them. Yeah, so Andy's read a significant percentage of these. One of these is his journal, and he did some of his drawings in there. It's actually really neat. I feel like I should show you guys that at some point in the future. It's pretty talented. He's good at using all the parts of his brain. It's kind of crazy. They say that people who can write aren't necessarily good at math. People who are artists aren't necessarily good with language, and he's good at all of that stuff. So it's really good times, fun times, never a dull moment with Andy. All right, you guys, we've made it an hour. Thank you so much for weighing in the chat. I appreciate the super chats as well. I'm going to leave you guys with a question of how society can solve problems like insanity, for lack of a more scientific, soft-sounding term. I'm not convinced that asylums are the way to go, but I have seen instances where involuntary commitment was probably the best choice, because there's not really a way to... They've made it so difficult to commit someone to involuntary care, and I understand why, but it's making people with serious mental issues worse off. It's leading to their dying early. It's making it so that they're not receiving treatment that they actually really need to live any kind of semblance of a life. And it's really hard. And I know that for a compassionate person, they're like, oh, well, just let them do whatever they want. No, they're crazy. You cannot allow this kind of person to do whatever they want. They are functionally children at the adult level because they don't have a grasp on what is right for them and how they need to live a healthy life. Now, there is a very libertarian view that says, just let them do whatever they want. I personally have a hard time with that because unlike a leftist, I am actually compassionate. I really would like people to live their most meaningful lives as much as possible. But I will leave you guys with that. How do we solve the problems like we have in San Francisco and LA and Seattle and Portland and in all these other places where we have issues with homelessness, issues with addiction, issues with people who should be committed to some degree. And I will ask you guys about that at the beginning. I'm going to make a note of tomorrow's thread. Question of the day: asylums. Okay. All right, so you guys be thinking about that. By all means, if you see anything new and interesting, if you come across any interesting articles about that kind of stuff, because I know a lot of stuff people have thought a lot about this, but we haven't really come up with a good conclusion. And I will check back in with you guys tomorrow. I know this is a crazy week where the calories don't count, the one right between Christmas and New Year's. I'm trying to think. Is there anything that I could do for a New Year's kind of stream? I don't think so because I'm starting this new project. I thought it might have been fun on Timcast IRL to do like a summary of all the really funny clips from the previous year, and kind of talked about who the most interesting guests were. But with this new undertaking, we're too early on. I don't know what would be a good year-end wrap up, but we could all talk about resolutions for sure. That might be fun. So I'll be thinking about that. We'll be thinking about what we're going to talk about on Friday night for sure. All right, you guys, until tomorrow, until I see you next, be well, be yourselves. All right. Bye, guys.